Hello everyone and welcome to another video. Now sometimes I just type the word rare into eBay and see what comes up. A few days ago that search term led me to one of these, a graphics card that looks familiar yet it's one I've never heard of. At least not until earlier this week. This is the AMD Radeon E9173, a low profile card based on the Lexa GPU. Thanks to its small size and non-existent power connector requirements, it should work in most systems while consuming less than 35 watts. From what I understand, the E9170 series was designed for embedded systems with strict thermal constraints. Think thin clients, retail kiosks and digital casino games. The E9170 series consisted of PCIe cards like this one, as well as mobile PCI Express modules or MXMs, which could be integrated directly into custom boards. After a little bit of additional research, I found a few thin clients that had one of these as an optional extra when they first came out, which was back in 2017. Now you might be looking at this and thinking surely it's obsolete, but the truth is it has DX12 support and, from my testing, it managed to start and run every single game that I threw at it. That's not to say it runs them well, but as you'll see, it isn't completely useless for gaming, even if it wasn't really intended for it. It uses Radeon Pro drivers, which will cause some games to throw up an unsupported warning when launching them, but I never had a game fail me completely. So, I guess we should see what this pretty hard to find graphics card can do. For starters, it's Fortnite, and if you want to play this, then you're in luck, because 1080p with the lowest settings and performance mode enabled will net you at least 60 frames per second. I'm recording like this today because this card has one display port and two mini display ports, and I can't hook it up to my capture device. Hopefully you can still see all the statistics. If you've heard of the Radeon Pro WX2100 workstation card, which I think I've reviewed before, then that's sort of what we're working with here. They're very similar. I think the only real difference is the colour of the shroud and the slightly higher base clock with this one. Moving on to GTA 5, and you can hopefully see that the card is using just 17 watts of power max most of the time, and it won't often exceed 60 degrees. All this while hitting 60 FPS in GTA 5 at 1920 by 1080. We're using normal settings here as well as FXAA, but you could probably push things a little further as far as the graphics are concerned. I didn't know what to expect from this, probably a bit worse was the expectation to be honest, but not so bad so far, and with that, let's move on. Counter-Strike is more CPU intensive, but it does still require a little bit of GPU power to hit those higher frame rates, and that's not a problem for the E9173. Now that isn't the catchiest name in the world, but as long as it works then I can't complain. Now I know at the start I said it was rare, but please remember that this doesn't mean it should be expensive. Some sellers often think that, but ultimately it's the performance that you should be paying for, and that should be what makes you want to buy a graphics card, unless you're like me and you just buy stuff because it sounds or looks cool. I won't be keeping this one, but only because I bought two. But seriously, I'd recommend maybe consider other options before this one. There are plenty of low power half-height cards about, and lots of them are better than this. Let's turn things up a notch now and jump into Call of Duty Modern Warfare 2. Eagle-eyed viewers may have noticed I'm using my Ryzen 7 5700G PC today, and this is because the card wouldn't work with my 12th Gen i5 system. The 8-core chip still lets the card reach its maximum potential though, because it is a pretty weak GPU, and the 5700G is still a very solid option. Ironically, the integrated graphics on the processor are probably better than the card itself. Here in COD we had to make some rather large visual sacrifices, but this wasn't the worst experience I've ever, experienced, with a somewhat acceptable average, all things considered. Elden Ring next, and well, it's not all that good to be honest, but this card is definitely best suited to those lightweight and older titles like Fortnite, CSGO and GTA. 720p at low in Elden Ring isn't the worst time I've had playing this game for sure, but it certainly is not ideal. Marvel's Spider-Man Remastered will do a bit better because it has FSR, so we had to go with 720p as well as FSR. It looks very blurry, and while I couldn't use ultra performance mode because it caused some weird graphical glitches, I could use performance mode to get us somewhere near 30 frames per second. It's a good effort from a card that really isn't designed for this sort of stress, but realistically you shouldn't get one to play newer games even if they do run without a problem. They just might not run well. I should say they'll start without a problem, they just won't run without a problem. For our final test, I have a bit of a surprise, and the surprise here is that Cyberpunk 2077 ran with at least 30 frames per second. Sure, it was at the absolute lowest settings possible, including the implementation of FSR Ultra Performance, but it did give us a sort of solid gameplay result, and I didn't think a card intended for thin clients would be able to handle this. The DX12 support really adds a layer of capability to the E9173, which is ultimately too weak to play most of your favourite AAA releases. Still, it's not all bad. Hopefully the new owner will get some joy out of it if they intend to play an older games collection. Now, the E9173 isn't a card I've often seen on eBay, that's for sure. It's only been within the last few weeks that I've seen a few pop up. I think I saw a 4GB one, or perhaps it was the E9175, because there are a few different variants of these cards in existence. It is hard to find, but as far as performance goes, if you genuinely want one of these, then don't pay too much for something that's going to offer 30 FPS at best at 720p most of the time. All that's left to say here though is thank you very much for watching. If you enjoyed this video, leave a like on it down below, leave a dislike if you didn't. Let me know what you think of this card as well, as if you've actually owned one, because I'm sure not many of you have done, if you've even heard of it, of course. Subscribe to the channel if you haven't done so already, and hopefully I'll see all of you in the next one.